And just wanted to quickly introduce Sister Amana here, mashallah. We're very privileged for her to have joined our team this year. Sister Amana, she specializes in board governance and nonprofit management. She's a dynamic entrepreneur, a seasoned leader based in Fountain Valley, California, renowned for her accomplishment across the events, hospitality, and nonprofit sector. With a robust background in business development and strategic leadership, Amana has consistently demonstrated her ability to drive growth, innovation, and excellence in every venture she undertakes. Amana's entrepreneurial spirit is further exemplified through her establishment of Baraka Cafe and Bloom Espresso. Mashallah. At Baraka Cafe, she developed and executed a strategic business plan that facilitated the cafe's successful launch within the Islamic Society of Orange County. Our strategic oversight ensures the cafe's continuous growth and operational efficiency. In addition to her business venture, she has significant contributions in Muslim non-profit leadership. As the former chair of CARE California, she provided visionary leadership, spearheading strategic planning, board development, and budget oversight. She holds a Master's of Science in Environmental Health Science and Policy, and a Bachelor's of Science in Applied Ecology from the University of California, Irvine. Inshallah, I want to begin with few brief remarks regarding what we're here to discuss, inshallah, and then I'll pass it off to Sister Amana to discuss how we make that real. I want to begin in a passage of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
وإذ ابتلى إبراهيم ربه بكلمات فأتمهن قال إني جاعلك للناس إماما قال ومن ذريتي قال لا ينال عهد الظالمين.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this passage of the Quran, He talks about the Prophet Abraham after he was tested in many ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him. And after fulfilling all those challenges and tests, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the ultimate certification that any human being can ever have. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. It is unlike a Nobel Peace Prize, is unlike any other awards that exist. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself giving a seal of the best caliber. And you would imagine when someone is praised for their own achievements, when they are told that you have done everything right, and they're being awarded, the first person they think of is not themselves. The person they think of is themselves and not someone else. But he says, قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي, that I am successful, I have earned your approval, Ya Allah, but what about my zuriyah? What's amazing, the scholars of the Quran point out, is he's not even talking about his ahl. He's not even talking about his own family. In those speeches, when you take awards, you say, I want to thank my wife, I want to thank my kids, I want to thank my mother, my parents. You're still talking about your own family. Ibrahim alayhi salam is so concerned about zuriyah, meaning his progenies, people to come, generations to come, way beyond his time. And that is the mindset that we as Muslims have, that we're concerned not just about our own hidayah, own guidance. We're just not concerned about our own family hidayah and guidance, which becomes the case in a nuclear system and family where we're so focused on our own circles. But Muslims thinks about the generations to come. It almost pains you and concerns you. You have this anxiety over what will happen to Islam in America in 50 years, 100 years. It becomes part of your daily anxiety and concern. Not just what you leave behind for your kids and what kind of assets your kids will have to work with. It's beyond that. And subhanAllah, we find it amazing. I want to share this with you. 3 imams. Perhaps you heard their names, perhaps you haven't. Imam al-Sha'bi, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Yusuf. Imam Ash-Sha'bi, a great scholar, and it is narrated that Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, one of the great scholar, he, as a young man, he was passing by the house of Imam Ash-Sha'bi, and Imam Ash-Sha'bi thought he's one of his students, and he said, "Where are you going, young man?" And he says, "I'm just going to the marketplace." Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, his family owned stores. They were in the silk business. And he said, "I'm going to the marketplace." He said, "Young man, I see a lot of potential in you. You should sit in the gatherings of the scholars." Random young man he sees on the street, wants to inspire him, wants to say some words of wisdom to him. And so that is one of the turning points of the life of Imam Hanifa. But now that's not the most amazing part of the story. Abu Yusuf was a young student of Imam Abu Hanifa. And Imam Hanifa now is a learned scholar. He has a circle. Abu Yusuf, a young man, comes from a poor family. He's sitting in the gatherings and the classes of Imam Hanifa. And one day his father comes and drags him out of the class. He says, "What are you doing wasting your time in these classes? We're not rich like this. We can't sit around studying. We have to go do work, earn money." And when Imam Abu Hanifa heard about this, he said to Abu Yusuf, and he made a deal with his father, that how much do you need per day? I will pay for his tuition and I will cover whatever he would make if he was to work. That's how he paid it forward. Because someone like Imam Sha'bi inspired Imam Abu Hanifa, and the Imam Abu Hanifa in turn made sure that Imam Abu Yusuf was taken care of. Over 60% of the US Muslim population is below the age of 41. Yet if we look at our leadership, most of our institutions and masajid and our boards, they're well above age 41. We have a crisis that's brewing. There isn't a pipeline of young people who are going to be transitioning into these leadership positions. At best, sometimes, some masajid, mashallah, they bring in a young brother or a young sister, and they're almost a token board member. They sit in these boards, and the ammus and the uncles, they run the show. They say one or two things, and that's the extent of their ability and power. But the reality is that the Gen Z and the millennials are reshaping the landscape of America and our companies, and they're going to reshape the landscape of our organizations. And if we are not up to par, we have to think a lot and deep and hard about the future of our institutions. I was sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner just a few weeks ago, and there were some, mashallah, very experienced and very veteran organizers and leaders from our community, mashallah, and their children were at this dinner as well. So a conversation comes up, and one of my dear uncle, he goes, "So why aren't you guys," talking to some of the children of these very experienced, very veteran organizers and leaders in our community, "how come you guys not involved like your parents?" And they asked me, "So, Brother Muhammad, you're like expert at this. Why aren't they involved?" I said, I'm not sure if that's a good question. I want to turn the question around and ask them, where are they involved? Why aren't you guys motivated to help out the masjid? I said, that's not a good question. Let's ask them, what are you motivated about? Where else are you engaging? Because I could look at college campuses, I see excitement and engagement. I could see Charity Week by Sun Relief, I see excitement and engagement. I could see MIST, I see excitement and engagement. Clearly there are places where they're excited and engaged. So the pipeline problem is not that they're not motivated or they're just lazy. The generation just sit and makes video on TikTok. That is not the case. It's a little more complex than that. And so, let me ask you. I have said things to you for the last few minutes. Why aren't young professionals, let's be very specific, why are they not engaged in our leadership? Egotistical nature of leadership, okay?
The young people get discouraged by bickering and fighting at the seniors, and they're like, I'm better off in the
Subhanallah, that is true. I know, parents, children of board members, they will never step forward in any kind of masjid issues. They're like, and they know. You say, no, I don't bring my, issues to at home. They could see you're stressed. Every time you come from a board meeting, you're frustrated. They see, in your face, right? And they're like, if the masjid is causing you this, I don't want to be near that place. SubhanAllah, that's true. What else? Why aren't our young professionals, let's be very specific, why aren't they involved in our masajid, institution, organizations, generally speaking? Generally speaking. SubhanAllah, yeah. Yeah. SubhanAllah. Except those in leadership right now. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. What else? Yes. Okay, they just come sit, be part of us, just listen to what we're saying. We're experienced, been in the masjid board for the last 30 years. You just came into this picture, I know what I'm doing. Okay? What else? Why else aren't young professionals involved in our institutions and organizations? Yes. SubhanAllah, that's true. At Oak Tree, we have the opportunity, which many, very few have, is we go into masajids, organizations, and we get to talk with people. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work with organizations, mashallah, that are investing in saying to us, we're hitting our 50-year mark. Can you come, assess our community, talk to our volunteers, our board, our staff, look through our stuff, and help us plan the next 5 years. And in doing that, we've been collecting a lot of inputs. And one of the things we often hear is that the sisters who are in the board, their opinions aren't quite taken, not the same way. We hear from paid staff that the CEO of, I won't name the organization, that the brothers, they have their side conversations and they make their deals, and the sister only can have an input during the meeting, and that's about it. And because the brothers can go have tea, whatever else that they're doing on the side. So it's true, it's real. We've been hearing it in all the works we've been doing. Final thought, why aren't young professionals involved in our organizations, not to mention in leadership? Yes.
Many of the problems faced by these organizations are not understood. If you go to any of the round tables and others, what you find is the original Yaqeen sponsored a project, let's say, one of the best produce companies. Now they're wondering why the young people aren't supporting them because they never found them.
That's true.
So the younger people want to have different projects. I was talking to them about working to different issues that they have, number one. Number two, many times they come from countries where it's authoritarian and it's their own kids or their own people who take over after them. Because they're authoritarian.
SubhanAllah.
They don't come from a history of non-profit. They don't understand the importance of succession planning. Four, I took 30 years to get to this position. You do whatever I tell you to do. That kind of mentality you have to think.
SubhanAllah.
So fifth, and for some of the mobile institutions, is lack of understanding what non-profit is about. It's about developing people that support civil society, not just through wisdom. You are providing people that are doing another non-profit, and you want other people to do more, so there's a lack of understanding what the sector is.
SubhanAllah. No, the brother here summarized it so beautifully, mashallah. And many of the areas that we see quite often, from not knowing what a non-profit is, to pure, unfortunately, the problem of ego, and some baggages as well, whether we know how to operate in authoritarian and nepotism culture only, or we know how to operate in a different way. And that's why I began with just touching on the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the three Imams, Imam Sha'bi, Abu Yusuf, and Imam Hanifa, because that's the spirit that we need to walk into our organizations with. The spirit of that I'm always trying to pass the torch. I'm trying to develop, and there is a mission that's bigger than me. A lot of times people get so caught up. I mean, I meet board members. If they're on the board today, they will sing praises of this organization as if this is the best thing on the planet. And next year I talk to them and they're telling me all these issues and there's not doing well. I said, brother, are you still on the board? No, this year I didn't get elected. I said, okay, I know what the problem is. The problem is you didn't get elected. So unfortunately, shaitan, is everywhere, and it's all of our work. SubhanAllah, I want to quickly, because I want to hand it over to Sister Amana, inshallah. I quickly share with you, the story that we know from the life of Rasulullah about Usama bin Zayd. And some of us here mentioned it about the trust that leadership puts on young persons. Prophet during his lifetime, he assigned Usama bin Zayd, one of the companions, who was only 18 years old, according to some maybe 20, on a very serious expedition, head of the army, on a serious expedition to the north of the Arabian Peninsula to face the Romans. And he was only 20 years old. And by the way, companions at the lifetime of Prophet they had different opinion, and they came to Rasulullah and they weren't too happy with this decision. Because in this army, led by Usama bin Zayd, was the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar. And so you can imagine Abu Bakr and Umar being led by this 18-year-old general. And so this army dispatches, Rasulullah obviously, he falls ill, and the news spreads, the army comes back. And now Abu Bakr is the Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he is taking lead, and he wants to continue on what the Rasulullah had assigned. The companions, they come to Abu Bakr now. They say, Abu Bakr, I know Rasulullah had appointed him, but we should really reconsider. Do we really want, we're in a critical position, this is, we have a lot at stake, people are defecting and so forth. Maybe we should consider a much more senior general. And Abu Bakr says, I'm not going to go against what Rasulullah himself has done. And so, by the way, one of those people who came to Abu Bakr was Umar. And subhanAllah, you see the wisdom. Abu Bakr walks Usama bin Zayd out at the outskirts of Medina. And while he is sending off this general, this 18-year-old, 20-year-old general, he turns to Usama bin Zayd and says, Usama, if you feel, only if you see fit, feel free to take consultation from Umar. It's not like, hey, listen, you have Umar in your ranks, you better be checking everything with him and I have no trust in you. And no, it's just the way he said, look, if you see fit, Usama, feel free to consult Umar. And that's the level of trust. And so I want to leave you off with this bit of a framework. If we want a stronger pipeline of young professionals, college students, and even others to be getting involved in our organizations, number one, we have to prioritize them. Just like we prioritize everything else, subhanAllah, and rightfully so, youth and marriage services and programs are prioritized in our masajid organizations. It's time that we also prioritize young professionals. We know that the impact having young professionals in our boards, in our organizations, subhanAllah, baby boomers, they give as a duty. But study shows that millennials, they view charitable donations as a way of rolling up their sleeve and doing something for the mission. What I'm saying in English is that when you have millennials and Gen Zs in your organizations, they're not only doing it because it's a duty or I've always been part of this masjid, they're going to do it because they really believe in you. And that's powerful people to have in your organization. Number two, you have to understand them. You could prioritize them, but if you don't know who you're dealing with, you wouldn't know how to attract them, how to manage them, how to empower them. So do we understand what these young professionals, these college students are going through? They just graduated. Job market is difficult. Some of them are trying to get married. They're trying to bid their time until they do their masters. Some are dealing with the social expectation. Some are married but struggling in their first few years. This is who we are dealing with. This is the population. You have to understand where in life they're in. They're not well established. They're not, at the end of their careers. It's very different. So these college students are involved, and they were involved in their MSA, but not involved in the masjid. They might be involved in non-Muslim orgs where they feel more comfortable, more aligned, right? And you find that they used to be engaged back in college, but they're no longer involved because of the life circumstances. So in order for us to develop a pipeline, I just want to leave you off with these few things to think about. We have to think about recruitment. How do we recruit them? We have to think about engagement. How we not only recruit them in our organization, how we engage them. Then how do we manage them? Then how do we empower them? And when it comes to recruitment, we have to think about a little bit differently about how we acquire volunteers. No longer people want to be in a long list of volunteers and do anything and everything. People want to do a specific task and a specific project. That's the culture. And so how do we reorganize our masjid work to be that? They want to see transparency. You have to find them where they're at. We have to engage them. Engaging means you have to work with them one-on-one, and you have to figure out what each of their needs are. Let them bring their whole self, right? They're part of our organization. Are we helping them with their career? Are we helping them get married and so forth? How we manage them. We have to have better management system in our organization. They're not going to come in a mess where the process is very difficult. To submit in a receipt takes time. 54% of young donors will have less trust in a nonprofit if the process of donating is not simple, right? And then lastly, we have to empower them, help them build team, help them own projects. And here we just talked about the pipeline. What I didn't even talk about, and inshallah Samana will talk about, is about even transitions. So one is about having healthy pipeline, but then even when we think about year to year, when the board changes, there are a lot of problems. There are problems around people hold on to the donor list. There are problems with individuals who don't record the processes. So you have to, they're like becomes a block. There's oftentimes fights in transitions, and those are areas of succession planning when it comes to recruiting new individuals and also transitioning within the organization that we need to really address. With that, I took way more than I was planning to, but I will hand it off to Sister Amana, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me? Assalamu alaikum. So thank you. I mean, that was, mashallah, very informative. You already gave a really nice bio. So again, my name is Amana. I grew up in Southern California, and I'm so happy to see Brother Anwar here. He lit up the room when he walked in. I just want to tell you a little story about Brother Anwar. When he first came here, I was in about 7th or 8th grade, and he identified a few people, him and his team of 3 from IR, and they saw something in us. And I really want to say that was part of succession. He saw these 7th, 8th graders, 9th, 10th, got them involved in Islamic relief. We put on banquets, and this is me as like 8th grader, putting on camps. So I really do want to just give Brother Anwar a shout out, because I know he has probably been here and transitioned and is really somebody that we should all learn from. So I'm so excited to see you, Anwar. With that, so my name is Amana. I grew up in Southern California. I really want to show, especially for you, what you said about women in leadership. It is not easy being a woman, and alhamdulillah, I was at the height, the top level of CARE California. I was the chairperson. And the reason why that happened started with people like Brother Anwar identifying somebody, saying, okay, they look like they can do something, they're excited, let's get them in this pipeline that we just talked about. For me, the reason why I'm involved, the reason why I want to be part of an organization is that I'm looking at it as my sadaqah jariyah. I want this to keep going and giving long after I've passed from this world. In order for me to do that, I need to make sure that systems and procedures are there that I've had a mark on. So I joined CARE California in about 6 years ago. I'm no longer on the board, but I am really a good case study of how you do transition. We really worked at reorganizing the whole organization, and one of those was really restructuring CARE California. It's a very complicated organization, just like MAS is a very complicated organization, just like IR. All of these organizations are nationwide, some even internationally. So really setting up these systems and procedures is what I looked at as my intention as chair to how I'm going to keep giving long after I've left the organization. So I didn't know that this was going to be something that I fell in love with. I love board governance. And what is board governance? Does anybody understand the word? When you say governance, any idea? Okay, process of managing the board and? Running an organization, right? Anybody else? Who's on a board? Let's do that. All right, we have 1, 2, about 5 people on a board. How many people want to be on a board? No one wants to be on a board? Okay. How many people are staff of an organization? Of a nonprofit? Let's go there. How many are staff of a masjid? Okay. How many people are on a board of a masjid? Okay, you're on the board of a masjid? What masjid? At Nashville, okay. That's great. How many people really are involved in their local masjid? Okay, so the majority. So we're all people that go to the masjid, we're doing work, we're really part of the system. One of the reasons why it's important to be in the system is to realize, okay, let me ask you the question. In your masjid, do you know who's in leadership? Okay, that's a good sign, because sometimes you'll go to the masjid and you'll ask them, do you know who's on the board? And they'll say, there'll be crickets. You wouldn't know who's on the board. So that's a really good sign. So all of you guys are very intentional, I'm going to say the word intentional, about where you go, your masjid, and then are part of some type of organization. How many people are involved with non-Muslim nonprofits? Which one? The YMCA? YW. Brother Anwar?
You were involved with Program USA, Alliance for Hunger, and Initiative, and this
MashaAllah. I'm part of the Girl Scouts of Orange County, and we were part of the Boy Scouts of Orange County, and really part of the city of Fountain Valley. How many people are involved in their local cities? Which city? Okay. Anybody else part of their local? Portland, Maine. Okay. What do you guys do in your cities? That's great. And what do you do? Are you? You're on the board. Okay, that's great. And how about you in Arizona?
So, I'm part of the Tourism Council in Arizona.
Okay.
We meet with mayors and the police chiefs to kind of build a bridge in case things go wrong or to limit it from the solution.
Okay. That's great. I'm so excited. Do you see how exciting it is to be part of your community, even outside the Muslim dimension? It's important that we have to understand, as Muslims, we are part of the United States of America. And being part of that and helping with succession planning isn't just limited to our own Muslim worlds. So we can be part of the masjid, and to be part of a masjid, you got to be part of your city. And to be part of your city, you got to be part of your state. So do you see how we are building up this ecosystem of how we practice? Somebody told me the other day that he noticed that Muslims tend to only work within our Muslim organizations, and we kind of live an insular life where we don't want to talk to anybody outside. And one of the things that the Jewish community is really, really good at is their civic engagement with everybody. And they've really instilled in their Jewish community that yes, you may not be, a practicing Jewish, or you might be secular Jewish, but you have to be involved. So I think as Muslims, if we start reframing and saying, I don't need to be part of my masjid maybe, but I need to be part of something. And that's where we talked about finding people where they're at. So if your masjid has something that's more, your young professionals are more politically engaged, then maybe having something for them, working with an organization and keeping that pipeline of leadership. So I did want to, my expertise is in succession. And one of the things that I've noticed that there's 4 types of succession. There's the clean break. I'm going to talk about the positive 3 first. The clean break, which I see mostly happening in MSAs, or high schools, where you're in your board, you leave, you just graduate. So you're no longer part of the organization, you had something positive, you did your job, and now you've moved on. You really don't go back too often, but you really don't have anything negative to say. There's really no transition of power. It's really like a club, right? When you were part of, like in high school, NHS, you do your job and then you graduate. You don't really look back. So that's like a clean break. Then we have something called, where it's probably more aligned with what's happening today, where it's involuntary leave. So you get kicked out of your board. You're no longer needed. You've decided people will find you toxic. They're like, you know what? We no longer want you out of the board. You get voted out, and you have a very negative feeling, right, towards the organization. So sometimes you become the ambassador of hate towards that organization because of the way they let you go, right? I gave so many years of my life to this organization, and they treated me like this, and they kicked me out, right? That's something we hope that we are not, right? We want to not have that happen to us. Now, the 2 other modes of transition are significant founder transition or light founder transition. How many people in this room consider themselves founders? I know Anwar's going to raise his hand. Founders of the organization that they're a part of. How many years have you been part of that organization?
11 years.
11 years, and what's the name? Oak Tree, okay, mashallah. Anybody else that's, Brother Anwar, you were part of Islamic Relief as a founder? Huh? I know, but you were a founder. How many years were you part of Islamic Relief? USA. 30 years. Anybody else consider themselves a founder? Okay, how many people like myself came into an organization that maybe was 15, 20 years established? Okay, so most of, how about you? No? So you consider yourself a founder? Okay. So I consider myself that I came into an organization that was already established. So with that, the transition can be a little bit harder, right? Because you're dealing with people that have already established this organization. They're not ready to let go. And then you have somebody like myself. I joined my first board in my early 30s, late 20s. And I came into this board and I had no idea what I was doing. When you join a board, a lot of people will say, mashallah, this brother has been serving the community, putting the chairs, he's here every day, she's cooking all of the meals, they're making the iftar. They deserve to be on the board. Is that what we want necessarily to be your board member? No. Maybe staff, right? So now we've kind of grown out of volunteering. So we have the staff role and we have the board. Somebody saw something in me and said, you should join this board. I was like, well, why would I join a board? Well, you know a lot of people, you've been part of this community, and we think you'd be a great board member. I said, okay, sign me up. What was the first thing I did as a board member is I got trained. There was this offering for board training, and I was like, okay, I have no idea what it means to be on a board. I'm going to get trained. I go, I get trained, and I realize that I have a lot of responsibility. I am responsible for a lot of things for this organization. I have a legal fiduciary responsibility to this organization. I need to take this seriously. So long story short, I got trained. I did the first strategic plan for CARE Los Angeles. This is me in my early 30s. At this point, I had no idea what a strategic plan was. Alhamdulillah, after 5 years, we reached all of our strategic plan goals and then thought about the next 10 years. And part of that was to restructure CARE California, which, subhanAllah, I was also part of. But did you see how I was part of the succession training or plan for CARE California without knowing it? There was no terms put to it. So I am still part of the organization and helping with their succession, but in a different way. So as you join these boards, because I think how many people raise their hands that they want to join a board? Okay, it's the most exciting thing to do. It's so fun and fulfilling if you really have this intention of why you want to join the board. The power is not there. Masjid boards, organization boards, there's not much power, and that's probably not what you're signing up for. So with that, this idea of having a significant founder role. So brother, what was your name? Are you still part of Oak Tree? Okay, so what is your role right now? Treasurer. So you're on the board. And how many years? 11 years, mashallah. So I hope we're thinking about who the next treasurer is going to be. Inshallah. Okay, so this is where I always tell anybody, even my children, you always have to think of yourself if you're not there. So when you do something, you think about, okay, if I'm not here, how I'm going to do it. So you're always thinking about succession, and that's where we have the light, so I'm going to go back, light founder role succession planning and the significant founder role succession planning. I am sure, look at MAS, this organization is how old? Is anybody? 25? 30? Okay, between 25 and 30 years old. 1993, okay. So if you look at MAS and you see the number of youth that are running it, that's amazing, right? And inshallah, I don't know too much about MAS structure. I think they are working towards making sure that this organization is going to run another 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So I hope that they have a significant founder transition. When I say significant, what do you guys think that means? You don't have to be there from the beginning. You have to be there when? So I'm talking about transition. So training, let's see that keyword's training. How many people are there masjid boards of the same people have been there for maybe 20 plus years? What do you think the problem is being on a board for over 20 years? Stagnation? No new ideas? Do you think age? So we have a workshop later on talking about systems and procedures and really looking at kind of the, what's the name of the session? Accountability. That's going to fall into there. So when I say significant transition for a founder, I'm saying the founder is actually not in a role anymore, but they're guiding the people that are currently in the board. Right? So they are basically still there. They're accessible. There's an article called The Long Goodbye. So meaning that they're planning on leaving, but it's just taking a really long time. Right? They'll be at board meetings, they may have a role, they may have an ex officio role on the board, but they really are there to make sure that the same problems that they faced are not reoccurring. Right? Because we want each generation, as their new problems arise, to face those problems, not the old problems that already happened. Right? A light foundation role, founder's role, would look more like, okay, you've got this, I'm here, call me if you need me, but I'm no longer going to really be active in the organization. But they're still accessible. I personally really like the significant founder role, only because it really keeps you attached to the organization that you're there. One, as you get older, inshallah, you have more money, and you have more expendable income, so you can still keep giving to the organization that you were a part of. You have a positive impact. So overall, you still think very highly of the organization. The one thing I hate, it really bothers me, is when someone leaves a board and they end up talking so much bad against that masjid or organization because they saw behind the veil, right? They saw the real workings, and that's what you do not want to do as a board member. You really want to make sure that you're training your board members to become ambassadors. As they transition out, they become training to the new board members that are coming in and identifying new board members. It is crucial as a founder or as a board member. You're in an organization for 8 years, right, brother? The Shura?
The organization is 8 years old.
And how many years have you been in there? Less than one. I would even tell you, as less than one, you should be identifying people that could potentially be coming into your board. It could be your own child, or it could be your child's friend, or it could be a young professional. You go, that's somebody that I see something in. I want them to be a part of this organization, and let's see how we can get them involved. We'll give them a project, right? So one of the projects that I worked on was Baraka Cafe. I don't know how many people have heard of it. It's a part of the Islamic Society of Orange County. And what's been amazing is that when people come, and we're not the first, Kahwa House or Kahwa Cafe at Adams Center, which I talked to, so that's a whole other thing about working together. We identified that we really need to have a coffee shop. And what we did is that it brought a whole new generation of people back to the masjid. We identified people that would run the coffee shop that are a lot younger than me, that understand what's going on, but they are also now going to possibly become leadership within the masjid to bring a new level of engagement. Because the last thing we want to do is to become like our Christian churches, is where they start closing. And unfortunately, if we do not pivot, that succession is not going to happen at our masjid level. So I think as founders of masjids, if you are part of one, really understanding how to pivot, because we have communities to model after. So the Christian community, people used to go to church every Sunday. Are they going to church anymore? No. So these centers are closing, but they have to learn how to pivot if they want to stay open. So there's whole articles dealing around succession, not just within our Muslim organizations. So this is not a Muslim problem. It really, like Brother Anwar said, is a non-profit problem. Being able to understand in your succession plan how you're going to identify the people coming in, how you're going to train them, and that's where Oak Tree can help. Oak Tree really is a place where you can have a new board member. Hey, you don't know what it is to be on a board? Let's do a nonprofit board training with Oak Tree to understand your roles and your responsibilities. So I hope you guys got a little bit of how to think about succession. And one of the things I really, really want everybody to understand is that succession starts from day one. Transition starts from day one, thinking about how you're going to leave your organization and who you're going to train. So one of the ways I like doing it is you should have board limits in your bylaws. That helps you think about succession, because you know you're only in the position for a finite amount of time. So you can come up with whatever your organization thinks. If you don't have board limits, definitely put that in and in your organization. I'll give you, since I'm part of CARE California, we have 2 terms that are 3 years long. So you can be on part of a board for up to 6 years. What's great about that is after the first term, you can decide, do I want to continue? Yes or no? Yes, I'll keep going, so I have another 3 years. That's what I did. I was chair for 3 years, but the first year, the previous chair was still on the board. Does that make sense? So I still had the resources of my previous board chair, because he still had privy to all of the knowledge and all of the institutional part of CARE that I could still talk to him. So the first year, I had my board chair still as a resource. Second year, I identified as a board, we didn't have the secret meetings that we talked about, which is very real. We made sure to have a culture in our board where we talked about who is going to take over, who is going to be the person that we're going to identify to be the future chair. once Amana leaves, right? So we identified who the future chair could potentially be within our board. That person was elected to be vice chair. So they now shadowed the chairperson for 2 years. My last term, I held no position on the board. I was there simply to hold institutional knowledge for the last 6 years to be able to help the current board. So do you see how it was always thought about? So in my way, I think of myself as having a significant founder role within my board. Now the next step will to keep your board engaged. That's a whole nother workshop. But really identifying who is going to take over once you leave your position of leadership. And it's candid conversations. We need to get over that I am the president of the masjid. I am the chair of this organization. And really understanding, like, you know what? I no longer have capacity to be chair. I would like to step down. I am not giving this organization what it needs, but I think this sister over here, who's been on the board for 2 years, really can be the next person, right? So having those candid conversations. We did the same thing with our treasurer. Because we wanted somebody with finance background, we made sure to recruit on our board somebody with that specific background. Okay, you know what? I have 2 more years left. I really think we need somebody that has a CPA to join our board. Guys, let's put a field out. Let's go out and see who has that interest and that capability. Identify them, get them onboarded so that they can follow the treasurer for a year, right? Because that legal fiduciary responsibility of your board is critical. You get them on your board, you start training them. You know what? I don't think they have the time. You know what? Maybe they're not the best fit to be treasurer. Let's find somebody else. But have those candid conversations. Because all of us are having the intention that this is not about me, it's about the organization that I am going to be representing. So I hope that gave you a little bit understanding that transition is something that takes time, that you really have to think about it from the beginning of your organization, and having those candid conversations with your board or with your leadership or with your ED or with your CEO, because your ED probably won't be there forever. We all know that. So really identifying who the next leadership will be is key from day one. Any questions?
So just some of the issues that come in such a discussion, like one question would be, do we change for the sake of change, or the organization is doing well and executing on the strategic planning, the resources, the accountability, which is the main function of the board, where we're doing fine?
So that's right now at this moment. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so we always need to be thinking about who is going to be taking the next role. It may be going well now, but we don't know what's happening tomorrow, so I always like to plan for the worst. So if you can start identifying those people now so that you have your plan already in action and you're not finding out, oh, you know what, I'm moving and I'm on this board and I no longer can be here. Or I got a job opportunity that's international and I can't be here. So you never want to put yourself in a position where you don't have somebody that can at least help with where you're at. So if you are somebody like myself, I ran Baraka Cafe for a year. I didn't want to be the store manager. I did it as a volunteer, so I needed to identify a store manager at that moment. The moment we hired our store manager, I told her, you need to find your assistant store manager now. Because I don't know what your capability is going to be in a year or 6 months. So she identified her assistant store manager. The moment we identified the assistant store manager, I said, you need to identify 3 staff members that potentially will lead up into this leadership role, right? So you're always identifying and documenting all of that. So I would say we can't think about, we're fine right now. I don't think that's a good enough way to look at life, because that's not what life is. Life is always going to have challenges, and so you have to plan for that. So we can, I think it's always better to have somebody identified. It's not change for the sake of change, so you can say, I'll be treasurer or I'll be president, But it does help you have a finite point to say, eventually I'm not going to have this role, who is going to take over, is always a good mindset in any organization or business. For example.
My name is Hannah. I'm a board member for Milwaukee Women Coalition. I have a comment. You know, we are a growing community. When you say that a board member should not last more than 6 years, which I agree, if you want a dynamic process of having different board members. But as a growing Muslim community in our area, we don't have that much population. You cannot find easily a replacement. That's number one. The other thing that we are as a growing up community, we do have a lot of immigrants, first generation. The mindset of volunteering, being a part of the community and be an active person, whether a board member or even an active Muslim, is kind of a challenge. People come with a lot of, it's kind of a luxury to volunteer your time to be part of that organization. I don't know how we can attract those people, you know what I'm saying? Like we have.
So how many people are on your board right now?
We are 30. Not all of us are active, to be honest with you. Our leader, our founder, she's very, very smart. We do have our strategic planning. We do have dynamic process, but we are really struggling to find a place. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's not easy to attract other women to be an active board member. That's an issue.
No, it is a big issue.
Yeah, and we are looking for diversity. We were struggling to find a woman, active woman from our brothers and sisters from African community, that Rohingya. So it's not easy,
It's definitely not easy.
Yes, especially in small communities, not like, maybe you came from a community that the Muslim population is small. Our Muslim population is growing, I believe, like.
So you don't have to look at it like right now, the point of your organization, mashallah, to have 13 board members is already amazing, right? So that's already an accomplishment. So that is great that you have 13. When you are starting an organization, you don't have to have those limits on yourself yet. But you have this idea that you're already thinking about how we're going to recruit, right? So even identifying where you're at is a success. So you know it's a point of tension, and you're going to now figure out in your board meetings, how do we do that? So that's the part, but having those conversations with your board is already that you're in the right direction. There's things we can talk about, later about how maybe to do programs or figure out ways to attract people, but the fact that you're 13 board members, because we're dealing with organizations that are 3 board members, right? The fact that you're 13 is already really, really powerful, and then understanding and identifying that, yeah, this is going to be something that we need to be aware of is great.